This is a school crossing guard full of signs that you'd have to be crazy to miss.
But imagine, as a parent, your worst nightmare, a bad bus driver come barreling through that very crosswalk.
But they don't hit your kid, they hit the crossing guard. That's exactly what happened to our next caller's grandma. Let's hear him trying to get her some help.
My grandmother got hit by a bus. I want to make sure she's not getting sued or screwed by the system.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that your grandma got hit by a bus. Mine got ran over by a reindeer, but I'm sorry. Tell us what happened.
So in September of 2022, my grandmother was a crossing guard for a specific school district. And while she was working as a crossing guard, she had just helped somebody across the street. And she's walking back across the street with her stop sign up, and the bus driver hit her. And basically, from her account, she went flying, but she doesn't really remember much. The next thing she remembers is waking up and the police are there, and the bus driver is also off the bus. We noticed that quite a bit of time had passed before she had regained consciousness due to the accident.
Wow.
That's so crazy. Now, in 2 years of pain and suffering, constant denial from workers' comp, we feel like there might also be some malpractice going on. We're not 100% sure, hoping that you guys can kind of give us some direction and advice, as far as that goes.
Yeah, I'm really sorry you're going through this, brother. Luckily, though, we do have Steve is kind of a car accident expert here. He's the man for this, so I'm going to let him kind of walk you through it.
Just kind of to start off, is your grandma has both, as you know, a workers' compensation claim. I'm going to refer to that as a comp claim. She also has a cause of action against either the school district or the school bus. And I guess I should probably ask you this question. My first question for you is, what was it, a school bus, or what kind of bus was it?
It was a daycare bus, a daycare bus that was dropping kids off at the school, if I'm not mistaken. But there were no kids on the bus at the time. It was just the bus driver.
Okay.
So it wasn't a district bus, but it was a daycare bus.
Well, that's good, because now you're looking at a private company. If you were looking at a school district, you may have what's called sovereign immunity issues. It wouldn't necessarily preclude your claim, but it would, or her claim, I should say, but it would limit her damages. So
I just want to say one real quick. I'm sorry. How do you hit it? She was a crossing guard?
Yes. So interested is
of all the pedestrians you could hit, how bad of a driver do you have to be to hit the person in the neon vest with a big red sign? Like, that's the most.
And she had to sign up,
yeah.
Right?
Well, here's the crazy thing about this story, is that the bus driver is physically blind in her left eye, and it's not like she can barely see. She has no basically no eyeball. There's like there might be something there, but there's no actual pupil. There's no areola. Oh, well, actually not areola. Sorry,
that's
guys.
A nipple. That's a different.
I got to be honest. I was just gonna roll with it. I was like, I'm not an eye doctor.
Welcome to
I don't know.
Hardly Legal.
Okay, so hold on. Let me just, this is a little quick survey. Drew, would you feel safe riding on or putting your little kids on a bus with a legally blind bus driver?
No, but I know POP gonna hold it down. She legally blind.
I mean, this is crazy. I mean, so Steve, what how does that factor in, or what other questions do you think immediately come to mind? Because this seems crazy.
Yeah, there's a host of issues here. First of all, I'm assuming this is a commercial motor vehicle. I would definitely like to know what her status is, as she has a CDL. That's a huge
What's
issue.
a CDL? Tell
commercial driver's license. So what you would need, the best example would be if someone is driving an 18-wheeler. You can't just be anybody off the street. You have to have what's called a CDL, which is a commercial driver's license. And there are a lot more rules and regulations, both state and federal, that dictate what you can and can't do, and certain things that would disqualify you as a driver of a commercial motor vehicle.
So there's a possibility that missing an eye and being legally blind is, or potentially is, a disqualifying feature of a commercial driver?
It definitely could be. I mean, I would obviously refer to the rules, which are called the Federal Motor Carry Safety Rules. I know, for example, off the top of my head, if you have sleep apnea, for example, that's one of the disqualifying factors. So I would obviously want to look into it, but I can take a guess that even if it doesn't violate the rule, it's still not good.
Okay.
Corey, as someone who has a traumatic brain injury, when she did get hit, how are her motor functions and everything of that nature? Did it affect her in like a concussion and anything of that nature? And have you followed up with documentations and appointments to see if she's doing okay? Because head injuries don't just come right away, and then you don't. There's a little bit of like wear and tear on there too.
That's a great question, Drew.
I can kind of break them out. There was a contusion to the head, and she had bleeding in her head, and they had said that, oh, that blood was not from the accident. It was actually from a stroke that she suffered, which we have no medical history, no medical records. She hasn't had a stroke that we're aware of, that she's aware of. So, but they did say that it was covered in the workers' comp situation, but she had bleeding, a traumatic head injury that she suffered. But that was one. So the contusion to the head, left shoulder, right elbow, right ribs, chest wall, right hip, left shoulder, rotator cuff tear, right wrist sprain, hematoma. Yep, sorry about that. Right hip, labral tear.
Yeah, in the labrum. It connects the ball and socket in the shoulder.
Right shoulder sprain/strain, right shoulder rotator cuff and tear. Now, the that were not covered based off of what the judge had determined was right hip labral tear, right shoulder sprain, right shoulder rotator cuff tear. The judge said that was not due to the accident, which is we find to be quite bizarre. Which then, I can let you guys take the floor. But
the judge said, what do the doctors say? Like, are there doctors that are saying, what are her doctors saying?
The doctors advised us that we need to appeal to the workers' comp, that there's no way that these injuries she sustained were not due to the accident. And so that's what leads us into the malpractice, is that my mother, who's kind of been spearheading a lot of this for my grandmother, because she can't do a lot of these things by herself, especially due to the accident.
Now, Corey, can I just jump in real quick, because I've got a question for Steve related to this laundry list, but I just want to say that your grandmother's lucky to have you and your mom.
Yeah.
And there are some grandkids or kids who are not as involved and interested in taking time out of their lives and careers and whatnot to be caring and to go through this and to help folks through trauma. And we found that really out there, especially the calls that we get in, oftentimes they are family members like you that actually care and are willing to. And the fact that you know all of the injuries in detail just shows how much you care.
Yeah.
And I want to contrast that with and throw this to Steve to talk about, workers' comp seems like it's only one of the issues. You talked about there may be causes of action that are separate. How do those things interact with the claim against the bus versus the workers' comp with the employer?
Yeah. Question for you, Corey, before I go on. The doctors that your grandma saw, were they through the workers' compensation insurance company, or were they somebody she went to on her own?
Yes, they were through the workers' comp company, and that was one of the doctors that stated that we should appeal this decision. So that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah, that's problem number one. And you would have never known that, okay? There's no way you would ever know that. If I was handling this case, workers' comp would be very far away from where I'd be handling it. You view this as a case against the bus company. And I'm going to refer to that as a third-party case. Depending on the size of the bus, you're either going to have a $5 million or $1 million insurance policy. I believe it's either 15 or if there's 15 or 16 seats in the bus, you're looking at a $5 million policy.
Do you know how many seats were in the bus?
That is something that we do not know. It was not a full-size bus. It was kind of a shorter bus, so it might be the $1 million policy that you're referring to.
Keep cooking. Steve.
Yeah. I mean, that's either way, that's something that can be looked into in the future. But if you handle this case as a third-party case, you can go to the doctors that your grandma wanted to go to, and not the comp doctors. And that's important because really for many reasons, but two. One, work comp doctors work for their insurance company. They are not working for the individual injured parties. They get their business from insurance companies, and while they are treating patients, their minds and goals and ambitions are to make the work comp adjusters happy.
They're getting paid by workers' comp, and if they start finding a bunch of issues that would lead to more claims and payouts by the carrier, maybe they don't get called as much by the carrier. Is that what you're saying?
That's absolutely correct.
Question, Steve. When you are doing a contracted out and you have your own doctors that you go to, are the costs covered by the insurance company, or is it going to come out of your pocket? Because a lot of people can't afford to get doctors and things.
And that's incredible foresight on your hand, because that was my next point. What happens most of the time is that doctors that we as attorneys know will not take health insurance, will not make you pay out of pocket. What they will do is they will assert a lien on the insurance claim, not the work comp claim, but the third-party claim. And they will get paid out at the end of the case. In Missouri, there's a statute called the Missouri lien statute that actually reduces what the injured party would have to pay back based upon the settlement and the number of lien holders and the amount. So you're statutorily protected, meaning you are protected by law to where the doctors won't take all of your settlement money. And that's crucial because you have a doctor that is used to seeing car accident victims, that their practice isn't going to hinge upon whether or not an insurance company continues to contact them. Their practice is contingent upon your grandma getting better. Yeah. And that's what you want. And you don't want someone who only has one goal, and that goal is to get your grandmother better. You don't want a doctor that has any other goals other than that.
You know what's crazy in this situation is, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the doctors that was hired by workers' comp was saying, bro, you're getting screwed here. Yeah. You need to appeal this, and yet it didn't happen. It kind of highlights that the lawyer who was involved didn't have the knowledge to understand the limitations and frankly even go against where there would have been a potential bigger pot to take care of your grandmother and her expenses.
And there's no way that you or really anyone in the general public would understand that, look, you've got two claims here. It's a very common misconception for people to think, well, I was at work, therefore the only claim I have is work comp. Yeah, in some situations, but in this one, no. And that's why you would definitely need someone that can handle both work comp claims and third-party claims. And I think, unfortunately, you may have a situation where you had an attorney that wasn't really investigating other claims that are out there. And
we got two. Let's break down two, right? We've talked a lot about what people should do. And, if you want to call into the show, go to hardlylegal.com and you can sign up. Or if you have a car accident, you need help with that, go check out Steve's website. We'll put it below and in the link. What's your website?
SloughLawOffice.com.
Okay, and we'll put it there because I don't know how to spell Slough. Slough
no one does.
Slough like owl?
Yeah, okay. Slough like owl and snowplow, which we in Missouri are going to see real soon.
All right, we have a functional thing we want to do for you, caller. So we have two things. You have an open lawsuit against the bus company, the third-party claim, right?
Right.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. But do we think he has a potential case for malpractice here?
I think there's a big concern here. I mean, one of the things that's really required, and Steve can speak to this specifically related to Missouri law and the ethics requirements, is there's obviously obligations under fiduciary duty to communicate, to make sure that you're not missing deadlines. Deadlines are the most kind of cut and dry type situation that the lawyer is responsible for and is supposed to be communicating on, etc. Now, that's a completely different area from injury claims and things like that. There are lawyers and law firms that are specifically trained and specialized in dealing with those kinds of malpractice issues, but they all really kind of build out of what did that malpractice cause you in harm. And it sounds like, fortunately, even though the workers' comp claim might be problematic, you might still be able to go into the third-party claim.
When you have a malpractice claim, do I need to prove that I would have, and let's say my lawyer misses the deadline, do I need to prove that I would have won my case or that I could have won my case?
That you would have won your case.
That I would have won my case.
And not to be too cynical, but lawyers created all the laws. So they're generally relatively favorable to lawyers as it comes through. But at the same time, if you think about it, you shouldn't have to pay if you weren't going to lose. Now, you may still have damages if you paid attorney's fees and they didn't do your job, and at the minimum, you would have lost your case, but you wouldn't have spent XYZ money because your lawyer screwed up. But at the end of the day, you do have to end up showing that your case actually would have been favorable.
And in this case, for our caller, Corey, he has doctor recommendations to get additional surgery.
Yeah.
Just based on all the damages that he said to us and the type of accident it was, without knowing more, obviously it still needs to be looked at detail. It sounds like there's a malpractice case worth pursuing here.
That's entirely possible. And that's going to really come to know what the damages are, and I'll throw it to Steve on this, is what kind of harm did it ultimately cause? Because, look, if there's a malpractice claim, but the third-party claim goes forward, her expenses, her pain and suffering are compensated for, then it's still a problem. I would still report that lawyer to the state bar. But if you win, you win.
Yeah. First things first, it's going to really boil down to communication. Any attorney that's worth their salt is going to make sure everything is documented when you are communicating with a client. My practice, we are shifting more towards text messages, so that way the client always has those messages. When a call is needed, we do that. But I think we're finding that text messaging is getting easier. But to go back to the topic, it's important that you retain all documentation, including the contract that your grandmother signed with the attorney, and see what kind of communications there are. I personally would not handle an appeal in that particular situation. Appellate law is a very different animal, and in my contracts with my clients, I definitely state that I won't be handling appeal. But you as an attorney absolutely have to know that if an appeal is a possible issue here, you need to recommend somebody to that attorney, to that client, and perhaps have a relationship.
And they didn't even talk.
Right.
Yeah.
The judgment came the 11th, and then we had a doctor's appointment and in between there, and then we sent an email to the attorney. So there's actual, paper trail of when we got the judgment, or the orders rather, and then we sent the email, never to hear anything again. So I guess the main concern was really the reason why we wanted workers' comp to cover these items was because it was going to be a lifetime coverage for those the surgeries or whatever it is on the particular the body parts. But I mean, obviously all of our goal here is to make sure that she gets back to 100% as much as we can. So it's not necessarily a huge issue for us. We just want to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Best ability. But if there was something that could have been done, at least that we could show the court, none of us are attorneys, none of us really like study law or anything like that. But we were just afraid maybe we get to the personal injury lawsuit and then they say, well, this could have been handled inside workers' comp. We don't want to cover that. I don't know if that's even a possibility, but we just want to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do and not cutting it short, or because we don't want that the same thing to happen in the personal injury lawsuit. We want to fight for everything that we can, so she's justly compensated for the injuries, because it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time we understand
you've raised a really good issue, Corey. And again, I commend you for the attention and energy that you're putting into this, because really what you're talking about is a legal concept of waiver. Have you not gone through all of the processes? And your concern is that because the workers' comp appeal deadline was missed by your grandmother's former attorney, is that going to complicate the third-party claim that you have against the bus company? And I'll throw it to Steve. Is that a concern?
It depends on what's been covered and what's not, and what the statute of limitations is. With that being said, if you have injuries that were caused by the bus and she either A, still needs treatment, or B, is going to need treatment in the future, you can definitely get that still. You can definitely still get that. And I just think we're going on like 2.5, 3 years now. The fact that nobody's ever told you this is unfortunate. I mean, Corey, you've gone above and beyond any duty you have to your grandmother, and it's just incredibly unfortunate that this far along nobody's ever told you this, and it's really, really sad that it's taken 2.5, 3 years for somebody to tell you, yeah, you've got 2 claims, and the comp claim is not the one you should start with.
I mean, this is part of the reason why vetting attorneys is very important. Part of the reason why we created this show is because people don't even understand those issues, right? The workers' comp versus the third party, but also the simple fact that how can you go and find a lawyer, ask the kind of right questions so that you know you're getting someone who has the ability. It may be, okay, look, this workers' comp lawyer knew that they needed to be responding, right? That's basic. Everyone understands that as a lawyer. But it's possible that this lawyer, in a violation of their own duty, didn't understand these other parts of it, right? It wasn't that they just ignored something. They just didn't even know, which is why it's even more critical to find things. Look, I trust sending important cases to Steve because he knows these different things. And whether you're in Missouri, where Steve is, or Southern Illinois, which is an area he also covers, or you're somewhere else in the country, you got to ask those important questions because these things are lingering. And I think Drew brought up a good question. Even the lingering nature of injuries can be something that drags on, and if you don't have someone who's experienced, guy who's done 1,000 car accidents and they've had broken bones and other things, but doesn't have any actual traumatic brain injury experience, that's going to be a problem because they won't even know what they're missing in order to take care of the problems that may come up 3 months later, 6 months later, 3 years later. It boggles the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to have the providers. You have to know the providers that are going to do the right testing. I rarely will touch a case that doesn't even at least have an MRI. You can't properly diagnose certainly a spinal injury without an MRI. And that's why you need an attorney that doesn't necessarily, your attorney does not have to be a doctor by any stretch of the imagination. And we're not. But
Doctor of law.
Well, correct.
I tell my wife every time she gets lippy, I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
But you got to know.
Yeah.
But you've got to know, right?
Yeah.
You're not the one. You're like a coach,
Right.
Right. You're
You gotta
not
know who to
running the
call.
routes.
You got to know who to call.
But you know what the play is.
Right. You got to know who to call. You got to know what to look for. Like I cannot see a herniated disc on if I get a CD of my client's MRI, but I can definitely tell you that hey, if you're looking at the cervical spine, if there's 1, maybe 2 herniated discs, and every other disc is within the normal range, you're looking at an acute injury, something caused by a car accident. Whereas if you have a situation to where, not all cases, but if you have a situation to where every single disc is herniated, yeah, then it could be maybe more degenerative and not related to the car accident. But again, I don't know that, and that's why you have to get the testing done and make sure you have the proper experts that can diagnose these injuries and work with you.
Steve, what do you see as the next most important steps, given what you've heard so far from Corey, that he needs to do to engage in it? I have personally concerns about, given the time that's come by, the injuries she's still suffering from. Is it just as simple as finding the right lawyer who can take the third-party claim?
Yeah, definitely need to talk to somebody else immediately. Statutes of limitations are difficult to beat. If bottom line is, if you don't have a case filed within your state's applicable statute of limitations, your claim is barred, and there is pretty much nothing that anybody can do.
Wait, so the PI case isn't filed yet?
Yeah.
About it.
Okay, it's been filed.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
Well, if it's been filed and the statute's been preserved, you need an attorney that essentially takes a look at this and says, I don't really care what comp said. I'm getting my own doctors to look at your grandma and figure out what her injuries were, what the diagnosis are, and what was caused by the crash. And it sounds like that laundry list of things that you had listed for us earlier in the call are all 100% caused by the crash. So at this point in time,
Where's the burden of proof? Right? So let's say she's in the crash, right? and she has damage to both of her shoulders, and I'm role playing now, and I'm the evil person that works for the insurance company. Okay.
Right.
I check under my bed every night for Luigi to make sure he's not there. Okay. And so I work for the insurance company, and I say, yeah, the bus hitting this woman didn't cause her shoulders to get hurt. It's a lifetime of lifting a sign up that's caused wear and tear to her shoulders. What do you do as a lawyer to combat that?
Prior medical records. So in every single case, let's say if you have an accident on January 1st of 2025, you're going to turn over to the other side HIPAA waivers or HIPAA authorizations to get medical records for at least 5 years prior to the date of loss. So your job as an attorney is to get your client's prior medical records and find out if there's any injuries or anything like that.
But let's say there wasn't. Let's say she hadn't got treated for her shoulders in 5 years or 10 years.
That's great.
That's good. That's enough.
That's great.
That's evidence.
If the other attorney goes up there and says, well, this wasn't caused by our crash, it was caused by something else, all you have to do is, in closing, is pull up the HIPAA waivers that you gave that other attorney and said, I gave them 10 years worth of medical records. 10 years worth. And nothing. And I tried a case right before, like the week before COVID, actually. And this was against an insurance company. And my client was in her 50s. And she admitted in her deposition that when she was, I think, 11 or 12, that she fell off the monkey bars at recess. And I think she said it as a joke. I'm not kidding. This attorney brought that up in closing and said, well, she said in her deposition when she was 11 years old, she fell off the monkey bars at recess. And that's what caused it.
Quick question, a couple things. So there was a shoulder surgery in 2017 that she had, shoulder replacement.
No, rotator cuff.
The rotator cuff repair.
Question on your question for Steve. 2017, the accident was 2022, right? That caller,
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. So is it 5 years from when the litigation's taking place, or is it 5 years from the date of the accident?
Date of the accident.
Okay.
So prior injuries would be relevant, would come into evidence, but it's going to have no bearing on the statute of limitations date.
Okay.
And then there was a situation that they were saying that she should go through Medicare for the right shoulder to get it covered. So we were curious about, I guess, is that the proper way best way to go, or are there any other routes that can be taken other than obviously the workers' comp? Like I say, we'll just leave the workers' comp alone, and then they suggested that we go through Medicare.
You said they suggested. Who is the they you're referring to?
Yeah, the attorney. Yep, the lawyer.
No. So Medicare may not even pay for that at first. Second of all, any money that Medicare pays on a case, they're going to get their money back. Finally, it's bad to use Medicare. This is going to get a little mathematical, but a jury is going to see if you decide to put the bills into evidence. That's a question, but assuming you do, let's just say I'm going to take a very easy situation. Let's say you've got a hospital bill that they billed out at $10,000. Medicare is going to pay about $1,000 of that, and the rest of it's going to get discharged. A jury is going to see both those numbers. Again, it depends on the judge, depends on the state, but in Missouri, definitely depending on the judge, you might see both numbers, or you might just see the 1,000. The statute's kind of screwed up, but anyway, if you have medical providers that do something on a lien, you're not going to have that issue. And so you're going to get the benefit of putting a larger number to the jury. But like I said earlier, with the Missouri lien statute, it's going to reduce that bill. So you have the benefit of the larger bill, but you don't have the burden of paying it all back.
So you're saying, if I could just repeat back what you said, and then I know you had a question, Drew. You're saying that when the jury sees $10,000 in medical bills, that was, when you said lien, that means that the lawyer's covering that, right? That number is going to go, oh, I think the damages are higher than if they only saw $1,000. When they see the smaller number, they're tending to give a smaller judgment.
Yeah, it's not so much that a lawyer's going to pay for it. What'll happen is, at the end of the case, a settlement check is made out to the client and the attorney's office, and that settlement check is deposited into the client trust account. It's got to sit there for 10 days.
But usually the lawyer negotiates the lien.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a relationship where the lawyer
Correct.
covers it. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's paid out of the trust.
Drew, did you have a question earlier?
Yes. So if, let's say you miss a statute of limitations on any filing, is that reason to put a malpractice suit in because you missed a certain thing?
Really
and
good
so
question.
you could get damages from that?
That's probably the number one leading legal malpractice claim.
Yeah. When we talk about deadlines and those kinds of things, those are the things that the lawyers know. In fact, there's a really important thing that lawyers have to deal with. One of the first things you have to look at when you get a claim that comes in is what is the statute of limitations, because your duty starts as soon as you start getting hired by that client, and it may even start just when you're doing the intake. If the deadline is the next day or the next week or whatnot, you've got to be very clear with that individual that your ability to pursue these claims is about to hit a hard brick wall. And so anytime that there's a statute of limitation involved, lawyers are acutely aware of it, or should be acutely aware of it, because the average person really doesn't have an idea about how that is, and it's different state to state. The circumstances can be different. There are circumstances where it can be tolled or extended, but that's pretty rare in a personal injury car accident, because you got hit by the car. It's not like you got hit while you're asleep and you woke up and you're like, I don't really understand what happened, right? So without getting too technical, the statute of limitations is one of the harshest rules, and thus one of the biggest obligations for attorneys to come in and say, hey, you've got to do something before this passes. But Corey, again, I want to echo. I really deeply appreciative of how much you care for your grandmother, and it sounds like you've at least moved a little bit past the workers' comp issue, which is a legitimate issue that you've got to be considering as you go forward with the third party claim, and making sure that, as Steve said, that getting the right experts in there to be able to look at your grandmother's injuries, that laundry list that was put in front of us, and the things that she's gone through, to make sure that she's getting that pain and suffering and those medical expenses really taken care of.
It sounds to me, as someone who, honestly, is a younger attorney, I haven't done anywhere near as much PI work as you have, but it sounds like a little concerning that, like, the current third-party attorney is saying, let's go with Medicare, right? Like, there's some warning signs here. So how do you evaluate if your lawyer's doing a good job, and how do you evaluate, or how do you change lawyers in a situation like this?
I mean, that's a tough situation for you, Corey, because if you have an attorney telling you something that seemingly makes sense, it's like, yeah, she has Medicare, go ahead and use it. But in reality, that's not what you should be doing. I think that boils down to research and making sure that you're going out and doing the relevant internet searches and educating yourself a little bit. But you should be, I tell my clients that when you hire us as a firm, the only thing you got to worry about is getting better. Like, you don't have to be going out and checking this stuff on your own. If you want to, go ahead and look at my content, because it's already there. So you're going to be able to see what I know. I mean, obviously not everything I know is going to be on my website, but you're going to be able to see what we're doing. So it's unfortunate that you've had that situation, because seemingly, again, it would make sense, but I just think that you need to make sure that you have an attorney that tells you up front, hey, look, I know what I'm doing. You can see what I'm doing. Full transparency. And they've got good content out there that can make sure that you can tell that they know what they're doing.
And I'll tell you, Corey, this we really appreciate you calling in and being able to talk about these topics, because when Steve says, hey, you've got to do some research or whatnot, some folks don't even really know where to go, right? So there's going to be someone who sees this episode and the fact that you're going in, the circumstances you're dealing with your grandmother, and they're going to go, wow, my lawyer didn't tell me about Medicare.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't understand. And it's going to be that little spark that hopefully changes a bad circumstance for the better, because they got a little bit more knowledge about how to handle it. So what we're going to do is send you some of the information, not just the stuff that Steve has on his website that's very helpful about some of these circumstances, but they'll be able to enable you to ask the right questions to your existing attorney and find out, do I need to get someone else in your particular jurisdiction who has the type of experience to handle this in the way that your grandmother needs it and that your entire family deserves. I mean, you're carrying this on your back. And frankly, the right attorney should be lifting that burden for you. Like Steve said, the job here should just be for your grandmother to get better. But Corey, thank you for calling in today. Do you feel like you were heard and that you've got a little bit more direction on what to do for your grandmother?
Oh yeah, man, for sure. I definitely like to. I had a couple more questions.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I mean, I know if we're running a little long. I can definitely send an email to you guys if that works best. But I just want to raise a concern. On the accident day, the driver had stated that she had told the daycare that she did not feel comfortable driving that daycare. Oh my
gosh!
In front of the policeman and in front of my mother. So I don't know if that is like a factual.
That's huge.
Actually did tell the daycare that, and if there's any proof of that. But I would assume that if so, would that not involve some sort of negligence or maybe heightened liability for the situation?
Yeah, one thing that we didn't really talk about is something that was called vicarious liability. And I'll try to be as brief as I can. If an employee of a company commits a negligent act, both the employee and the company are liable. And the company would just move into the same position as the negligent party. Now, what you're bringing up is a situation of a negligent hiring retention type issue, which is a different cause of action, but that is most absolutely relevant. I can think of a case once to where that I was working on where a truck driver killed two people. It was a 2-lane highway, was trying to get around a car in front of him and hit and killed two people in the opposite lane. Critically, that particular driver had actually been fired, and was out in, I think, California, and the trucking company was based in the Midwest. And they said, even though you're fired, we still want you to run a load for us. And yeah, so that's just an example of what companies will do when they've got bad information. May not always use it.
And here's I'll break it down for our audience and for you as well, Corey. The employer has an obligation to put the right person in the right job who can do the job safely. And if they knowingly put someone in a position to operate a multi-ton commercial vehicle, someone who maybe they don't have the mobility to be able to operate the vehicle, maybe their peripheral vision is less, maybe in this circumstance, they don't even have a good eye to be able to watch. Those are the kinds of things that the employer is absolutely responsible for. And good on the driver for having said it, right? To say, hey, my employer put me in this bad situation, and hopefully since she said it to the police officer and said it on the scene, that's evidence right there. The simple fact that it was said aloud is going to raise that question. That's a good claim right off the bat. You're going to get past a summary judgment on that issue because the employee is saying. Now again, maybe the employee just said it in the moment and maybe there's not a good record of it. That's not a today question. That's a down the road question. But at the end of the day, negligent hiring and supervision is very important because businesses and employers and managers have that obligation to put the right person in the right position to do the job safely. Drew?
Now when that bus driver says, I wasn't comfortable, does that absolve her of any wrongdoing, or does that just handcuff them together?
It's a rock and a hard place for an employee, right? You want to keep your job, you're keeping your lights on, you're taking care of your family, and the employer goes, hey, I don't care if you're not capable. It'll be fine. And the number of times, I mean, Steve, I bet half the cases you deal with, there's someone going, yeah, you know what? It'll be fine. It'll be fine if I just drink a few beers and get behind the wheel of my 18-wheeler, right? Or hey, I can't really see that good, but I'm going to drive this bus with children to a school. I mean, it really is.
I really can't emphasize. I feel like we didn't cover it enough.
Crazy.
Of all the pedestrians in the entire world for you to hit, a crossing guard is the hardest to hit. Like that's the worst person all the people.
But it makes sense. She was missing an eye.
No, I get that, but I'm saying like
But it is the
you're,
worst.
you're
It is
guilty
the worst.
and it's the worst person you could hit. This is a person in neon fluorescent stuff holding up big red signs. Like you have to be really dropping the ball to hit a crossing guard.
Ironically, she told the police officer that she was in her blind spot. That's
What's her blind spot? 90 degrees? Like what?
So if anyone's on the left side of my vision, yeah, man, like fucking welcome to God. I don't know.
It's like
I mean,
a 50% blind rate.
golly.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, these are important, and thank you, Corey. Those are very important. You can tell how we've kind of gone off on this topic, that is a really important fact. And your grandmother really is so lucky to have you, thinking critically about this, bringing these issues. We're going to get you some more of those resources. We'll answer some more of those questions off air. But Corey, thank you so much for calling into Hardly Legal today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thank
All right,
you.
have a good
Corey.
one.
Yes, sir. Have a great one.
Wow, guys, what did you think? We'll start, Drew. Drew, what did you think about that situation? Man, there's a lot of layers there.
Damn, you get hit, and then you have the worst lawyers possible, and the worst, and even the doctors are like, man, you're getting the kibosh. That's hard, and then you don't have any lawyers after you want to appeal, and you're trying to get in touch, and they're like, oh, time's up. That I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of nooks and crannies, and like
I've heard a lot of car accident stories before, right?
mhm.
I say this with all I love you, Drew, right? Like,
yeah.
Drew's not a lawyer. Drew has had a brain injury.
Yeah.
Drew, you could put a suit jacket on and win this case for this lady. Like right now. Like you as the lawyer right now are like, Your Honor, my client doing her job. In fact, just riff it. You're the lawyer. Win the case for this lady with these facts.
My client got hit by a bus, and the bus driver has one eye, and said that she doesn't feel comfortable driving, and my lawyers have missed dates for me to appeal and to get any work done. So now they're telling me I have to pay out of my own pocket or Medicare for shoulder stuff when I got hit by a bus.
Yeah. You nailed it. You nailed
Done.
it.
Do you
Done.
want to copy my bar card?
The show be like, I'm Bill Richmond. Just squint when you do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Do it. Yeah.
Dude, I mean,
I'm
that's,
Bill Richmond, but half black.
Yeah. God, I wish.
I thought he was half Asian. But
No.
I mean, we can all dream, but I mean, Steve, you've got the most experience on this. You've run your own firm now for 10 years. You handle personal injury. You actually started your career on the opposite side,
Right.
representing insurance defense, and you ultimately decided, hey, is this kind of part of the motivation, seeing these bad plaintiffs' lawyers allowing injured civilians to have to go through this mess?
I mean, it's almost like I don't know where to start. I mean, there's so
Really?
much there. I mean, as an attorney, it's an unfortunate situation for Courtney's his grandmother, but that's a case that you salivate over. I mean, you're looking at that and you're like, let's go. I mean, you spend all this time getting your ducks in line with experts and everything, and you're like, gee, is this ever gonna come in handy for me? And then boom, a case like that shows up. I mean, you got to be ready to go when you have that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, that's a case that can completely change your career. Completely change your career. And I've had those cases, when I was a younger attorney. I can remember my first one, and it's a huge deal.
Right.
And
I mean, it's an interesting set of facts to know, right? I mean, and Attorney Drew, you crushed it on the core facts, right? I mean, the bus driver that hit the accident, and then knowing that she shouldn't even have been there doing it in the first place, and then the employer going, "It's okay. What are you gonna do? Hit someone?"
right.
Oh man, absolutely crazy. But I mean, that it really is, and I mentioned it on the call. I mean, this is why we have Hardly Legal, is because there's so many people out there that their most experience with the law is Law and Order or suits, right? And maybe they can get on the internet and they're not sure, but at the end of the day, it's finding the right person who has the amount of experience like you do, Steve, to be able to look at this set of circumstances and work it up the right way for the individual, right? You've created your firm to be able to go out and help people like Corey's grandmother and his family to make sure she's okay. Drew?
Because of the lack of treatment, because of the appealing and the workers' comp, is there more cases, the more ailments and stuff that you get in the future can be tied to the accident because of the lack of treatment? Yeah, so there is a lot more. You can get a lot more because you're not getting the help that you need. When does it stop?
That's where, in a comp case, that's a little bit of an advantage, because when you do resolve a comp case, there's a form that, for easy purposes, it's called the settlement agreement. It's called the stipulation for compromise. But in that form, it does set forth that the employer's insurance company will pay for any treatment in the future if it's been adjudicated that the body part injured is in fact from the crash. I don't know that that's really something that I'm going to want to rely on. So I mean, it's there, it's important to have, but if we go back into this context, I would absolutely be getting future surgery reports. Mm-hmm. And the admissibility standard in Missouri is not, do you need the surgery right now? It's, are you at an increased risk of needing it in the future? And it's an important distinction. And you as an attorney are not doing your client any benefits. You're losing value on your case if you're not going out and getting those reports.
It's important because the things that may happen 5 years, 10 years from now, if you've got a shoulder that can't be fully repaired, you've got to have an attorney who knows the doctors who can properly evaluate, okay, I've seen 1,700 shoulder injuries, and I know that if you have an 80% reduced function in your shoulder, it's going to cause you to lean more on this other side, or especially with legs, right, and mobility, right? Yeah. If you've got a hip issue, ball and socket issue, and then now it's causing knee issues, and now it's causing foot issues, and then it's causing you to not move as much, and especially when it's older. I mean, when I heard that it was a grandmother, right, that stuff just compounds with age. Yeah. So, well, if you're out there listening to this episode or watching on YouTube, make sure to get in the comments. If you've seen this kind of issue and you've dealt with it, go ahead and leave a comment. It's important for people in the community to know that there are other folks who are dealing with this issue. If you're a family member that knows that your grandmother, your aunt, your mom, your dad is dealing with the situation, the only thing you really got to do is get them to a good attorney who can look at this. That's where you kick off looking at the right doctors to look at this issue. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there's nothing. It's small. It gets dealt with. But if it is a big issue, it's really critical to get the right attorney to make sure that it's happened and to enforce the rights. That's how our system works. That's what's required. But thank you for tuning in to Hardly Legal. We'll catch you on the next one.
If you have a crazy legal story and you want to talk to some lawyers anonymously, for free, call us.
Wait, we're not getting paid?
Nothing at all. I don't know how we're going to pay for it, to be honest.